Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign.
The Democrats are getting themselves all worked up because Donald Trump is threatening to pull billions of dollars in funding from vaunted Harvard University. Now, why in the world is this happening? Well, according to Harvard's president, the university would not submit to a list of demands made last Friday. Among them are that it eliminate DEI programs, screen international students who are supportive of terrorism or anti-Semitism, and ensure viewpoint diversity in its hiring. At stake, the government said, was some $9 billion in federal funding. So, of course, to you and me, this sounds perfectly reasonable, but to Harvard, it's totally outrageous that Donald Trump would demand that, yeah, we don't have our federal tax dollars go to support these DEI programs. And also, we might want to make sure we're not inviting radical Tamarimists into this country. And yeah, why not have a little diversity of thought? Because as we're aware, over 90% of Harvard's faculty is all Democrats or left-leaning. Okay, so let's get a little Republican or conservative thought in there. Okay, but down here, Harvard's president also said no government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach. Yeah, how about you turn down those federal dollars then? Then you'll actually be a private university and you can have this discussion. So what we're going to see today, of course, is Scott Jennings dismantling CNN and those good people over at MSNBC also getting into it over this exact same topic. But before we get to these clips, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
One of our fellow CNN colleagues, Ron Brownstein, has a column out just a few minutes ago, kind of looking at, and I realize we've been having a political conversation. It's an important conversation to have. But this is a brass tacks conversation, the argument that Brownstein is making about the competitiveness of the United States in medicine and technology, which is where a lot of this money goes, right? And these are not the departments, by the way, that many Republicans want to reform, like where they, the Arabic studies at Columbia University, et cetera, right? These are science, technology, often, graduate level work and things like that. And he quotes someone who says that these universities have partnerships with businesses, and it is the fundamental economic geography of the high-value, advanced industry system in America. Now that the Trump administration is threatening to stall this economic engine by terminating research grants for major universities, and argues that this is actually a huge national security problem. Do you think that that's correct?
I think as a political matter, if you went out and argued that to the American people right now and said, well, we're just not going to make it as a country unless we give $9 billion to Harvard that's sitting on $53 billion, you'd get your ass kicked, I imagine, in a political campaign. Now, don't misunderstand. I wish Harvard would actually work something out here. I do agree that these universities are important. They do important work. But I don't agree that we need to continue to fund people who won't listen to us when we say, you have problems. I would argue that it's a national security problem that these Ivy League colleges are turning out people who fundamentally hate Western civilization.
But usually,
so there's points to be made here, and they need to listen.
Scott, isn't the way that this normally works is that if you have a problem with Harvard University, then there is a system in place to actually adjudicate it, to discuss it, that there is a negotiation. There is not an arbitrary kind of pulling of the plug from one moment to the other, saying, actually, cancer research, poof, gone. Actually, all that cutting edge medical technology that you were working on, poof, gone. Because I had a lunch and I thought, wouldn't it be cool that I pulled $9 billion from Harvard University because they're easy pickings. That is not the way that the system has worked here. If it was actually in good faith, they would have gone to Harvard and said, you know what, I think you have a problem with X, Y, or Z. Let's talk about it. Let's see how we can deal with it.
I think people and Republicans in Washington especially have been communicating to the Ivies that they do have a problem for months and months and months. Let's go back to the Elise Stefanik hearing when she drug all these university presidents before Congress. They knew and have known for months that they have a problem with people who are sick and tired of the runaround on anti-Semitism on these campuses.
We unfortunately.
So Scott Jennings makes an excellent point. If you ask your average American, do we care about Harvard getting its funding? No, we certainly do not, especially when Harvard is sitting on apparently over $50 billion of money, right? They can continue their own research. Now, is it important to get some of this research out there? Sure, but we could actually have a real good discussion as to whether or not the federal government should be funding any type of research at any university, because then you're not really expecting to get any type of result or return on your investment. embarrassment, okay? But we have actually been having discussions for months about Harvard and places like them just turning out students who are anti-American, who are just rabid leftists, right? And that's the real goal of a lot of these places. And that's why their faculty leans so heavily to the left. So don't try to say that, oh, we have a mechanism in place that if you have disagreements, we can actually discuss them in a civil way and we can still get our billions of dollars. No, we're done with that. You had your chance, right? We actually had congressional hearings about how bad it was on these campuses, right? And they didn't want to listen, but I bet they're going to listen now that all of their money is being pulled. But of course, now the left is trying to turn it into a free speech issue, as we're going to see over here on CNBC.
It comes down to what exactly are they asking Harvard to do? They're asking Harvard to eliminate their DEI programs, right? They're asking them to do what else? I mean, because this is where the whole anti-Semitism issue becomes the main focus. And if they're giving them government funds and saying...
Look, to me, the issue has always been about, and it's a nuanced view, violence and genuine disruption of classes, to me, is a problem, and that should be prevented.
Right.
I'm a Jew. I hate the anti-Semitism piece of this more than anything, more than anybody. Do I think that people can scream from the rooftops if they want? I hate to say that, but I think that they can. And in the same way that we think that it was not right for the Biden administration to go after the tech companies around whether you think it was laptops or COVID or this or that. No.
The left misses those days of controlling Facebook and controlling Twitter. And at the time, they didn't say don't do it.
What I'm saying is, to the extent that
So now-
if we want to be,
now you're in
if
the
we're
game.
trying to have a consistent view about free speech,
But it wasn't consistent back then.
so why are we then saying it shouldn't be consistent now? My only point is, if we genuinely believe in free speech, if we're going to advocate for Elon
we're
Musk's
calling
X
whataboutism
and everything else,
instead of calling it for what it is, which is
you are doing
hypocrisy.
this is the ultimate whataboutism.
Why didn't the left care that we couldn't read about the lab origin of Wuhan or the Biden laptop?
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying if we believe that the government...
But you can't go back in time and decide to do it now.
If we believe that
let
the
it go
government
back
should not be
then.
involved.
You let it go back then.
So the Democrats are trying to pivot right now and saying, well, what about the free speech for all of these immigrant students coming to this country, right? If you're going out and actively supporting Hamas, if you're going out and demeaning this country, guess what? You don't have to be here, right? So trying to turn this into a free speech issue is them trying to kung fu the whole thing back on us, all right? But for months and for years, they actually were not advocates of free speech because they wanted to investigate you, arrest you, and kick you off of social media for posting simple truths that we all now know exist, that we all accept as being factual, okay? That is who the left actually are. But of course, it's not really a free speech issue, is it? This is about shutting down campuses. This is about threatening students. This is about destruction of property. These are all things that the radical left was actually encouraging and turning a blind eye to. So you can sit there on your high horse and talk about your First Amendment rights all you want, but that doesn't have anything to do with actual assault on these college campuses, which is why Donald Trump is going after them in such a heavy-handed way. These places are cesspools of leftist thought and action, and we're tired of funding our own demise as a country. But go ahead, Democrats, keep having these progressive leftist radical views because it's only going to hurt you in elections. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me.